Welcome to my channel. Have you ever wondered how one man could change the entire course of history? How one person could rise from being a fierce warrior in the deserts of Arabia to becoming one of the greatest leaders the world has ever known? Today, we are talking about Hazrat Umar ibn al-Khattab, R.A., a man whose name shook the palaces of kings, yet whose heart bowed humbly before Allah. His story is not just history. It's a journey of transformation, faith, justice, and leadership that continues to inspire millions even today. Before Islam, Umar, R.A., was known for his power, strength, and intelligence. He was tall, brave, and respected among his people. The Quraysh feared him because of his courage and determination. But beneath all that power, there was also pride and anger, the same qualities that later, when guided by faith, made him one of the most powerful protectors of Islam. It's amazing how the same fire that once opposed Islam became the fire that protected it. That's the miracle of guidance. That's the power of faith. Think about this. How does a man go from being an enemy of the Prophet Muhammad to one of his closest companions? How does a heart full of pride and anger turn into a heart full of love, mercy, and justice? It's a transformation that proves no one is beyond change. No one is beyond hope. The story of Hazrat Umar, R.A., shows that sometimes the strongest hearts break in the most beautiful way when touched by truth. As we go through his life together, I want you to imagine the deserts of Makkah, the streets of Medina, the battles, the prayers, and the moments that defined him. Each part of his story will teach us something about strength, about faith, and about what it truly means to be human. From his early days before Islam to his time as the second caliph, we'll see how his leadership shaped not just the Muslim Ummah, but the world itself. So stay with me till the end, because the journey of Hazrat Umar, R.A., is not just the story of a man, it's the story of courage, justice, and transformation. It's the story that reminds us that real power is not in ruling others, but in ruling yourself. And by the end of this video, you'll see how one man, guided by faith, became the voice of justice for all time. Chapter 1. Before Islam, the life of Umar ibn al-Khattab. Long before Islam spread across Arabia, there lived a man in Mecca who stood out among his people. His name was Umar ibn al-Khattab, from the noble tribe of Banu Adi, one of the respected clans of the Quraysh. Even in his youth, Umar was known for his tall, strong figure and his sharp mind. He could ride a horse faster than most men, speak with authority, and settle arguments with wisdom. People admired his courage, but they also feared his temper. When Umar spoke, people listened. When he walked, people moved aside. In the busy streets of Makkah, traders shouted, camels groaned under heavy loads, and idols stood tall in every corner of the city. Life revolved around money, power, and pride. The Kaaba, built by Prophet Ibrahim A.S., was filled with more than 300 idols. People worshipped stones, trees, and statues made by their own hands. The poor were treated unfairly, women had no respect, and the weak had no protection. Yet in the middle of that dark society stood a man who, deep inside, hated injustice even before Islam came. Umar didn't know the truth yet, but his heart was not blind. He was a man of discipline. Every morning, Umar trained his body and sharpened his mind. He learned poetry, history, and the art of war. He became one of the few Quraysh who could read and write. He worked as a merchant, traveling across deserts and dealing with people from different lands. Through these journeys, he saw the cruelty of mankind and the hunger for power that ruled every city. Still, Umar believed in fairness. If someone was wronged, he spoke up. If someone cheated, he faced them boldly. This made him respected, but also feared. His personality was strong like steel. He believed that strength was everything. Strength in words, strength in body, and strength in pride. He didn't like weakness. He thought that those who followed Muhammad, PBUH, were weak, poor slaves, women, and young men who spoke about only one God. To him, that sounded foolish. He thought, how can all our gods be wrong? How can Muhammad destroy the traditions of our fathers? In his mind, Islam was not just a new religion. It was a threat to his people, to his tribe, and to the way of life that had existed for centuries. But deep in his heart, there was always a spark of truth. Umar hated lies. He hated injustice. He was brave enough to face anyone who cheated or oppressed others. Even though he didn't believe in Islam yet, his heart already carried qualities that would later make him one of its greatest defenders. It's strange how destiny hides inside us long before we see it. Umar didn't know it yet, but Allah had already chosen him for something far greater than power, for the strength to stand for truth. Makkah at that time was full of tension. The message of Islam was spreading quietly, one heart at a time. Slaves found freedom in it. The poor found dignity. But for the leaders of Quraysh, it was a threat. They couldn't understand how Muhammad, PBUH, a man they once called Al-Amin, the trustworthy, could now challenge their gods. Umar was among those who felt angry. His pride in his tribe burned inside him. He couldn't bear to see the Quraysh divided. He wanted it to stop. As the days passed, Umar's anger grew. He heard stories about people leaving their idols, worshipping one God, and following Muhammad, PBUH. He saw some of his own friends turn away from the old ways. To him, this was betrayal. He decided something must be done. His heart was full of pride and fire. He thought that by killing Muhammad, PBUH, he would protect his tribe, his religion, and his people from division. One hot afternoon, Umar sharpened his sword. His face was hard, his steps heavy, and his mind filled with rage. The streets of Makkah were silent as he walked through them. Some people saw him and stepped aside, whispering, Umar is angry. Don't cross his path. He had only one thought in his heart: to end Islam once and for all. But destiny had other plans. On his way, a man stopped him and asked, Where are you going, Umar? Umar replied, I am going to kill Muhammad, the man who has divided Quraysh. The man looked shocked and said, Before you go, look to your own house, Umar. Your sister and her husband have already accepted Islam. Those words hit him like a storm. His face changed. His eyes filled with disbelief. His own sister? His own blood? How could this happen? The fire of anger burned brighter in his chest. Without saying another word, he turned and walked quickly toward his sister's home. Every step he took was heavy with rage, but deep inside, something strange began to stir, a feeling he didn't understand yet. That day was going to change everything. It was the day when the strongest man in Mecca would face the truth for the first time. The man who once wanted to destroy Islam was about to meet the message that would melt his heart. The fire of anger was about to turn into the light of faith. Umar, R.A., held his sword tightly as he reached the door of his sister's house. He was ready to punish, to shout, to end what he thought was betrayal. But what he didn't know was that Allah was already guiding his steps toward the moment that would change not only his life, but the history of Islam forever. Chapter 2. The Moment of Change, Umar's Conversion to Islam. The sun was burning over Makkah that day. The air was still, but Umar ibn al-Khattab was walking fast, his face filled with anger, his hand gripping the sharp sword at his side. His heart was heavy with rage, his mind fixed on one goal: to kill Muhammad, peace be upon him. Every step he took echoed with determination. He thought this would end the division among Quraysh. He thought it would bring peace back to his tribe. He thought he was doing what was right. But in truth, Allah was guiding him towards something much greater: the light of faith. As he stormed through the streets, people saw his anger and stayed out of his way. Some whispered, "Umar is furious today." Others said quietly, "He is going to kill Muhammad." No one dared to stop him except one man, Nuaym ibn Abdullah, who had secretly accepted Islam. Nuaym saw the fire in Umar's eyes and asked, "Where are you going, Umar?" Umar shouted, "I am going to kill Muhammad, the man who has divided Quraysh." Nuaym looked at him calmly and said, "If you kill Muhammad, do you think Banu Hashim will let you live? You should check your own family first. Your sister and her husband have already accepted Islam." Umar froze for a moment. His face changed, his chest tightened. His sister? His own blood? The thought struck him like lightning. Without another word, he turned sharply and marched toward his sister's house, his sword gleaming under the sunday. His anger grew even stronger, but deep inside, something else began to move, something softer, something unfamiliar. When Umar reached his sister's home, he could hear faint voices inside. It was his sister Fatima bint al-Khattab and her husband Sa'id ibn Zaid. They were sitting quietly, learning the words of the Quran from Khabbab ibn Arat, one of the early Muslims who used to teach them in secret. Umar stopped outside the door. He could hear something, the sound of recitation. The words were unlike anything he had heard before. They carried peace, rhythm, and a power that touched the soul. He didn't understand them, but they moved something deep inside him. Then Khabbab's voice grew louder, and Umar pushed the door open with force. "What is this I hear?" Umar shouted. His voice was thunder. The pages scattered. Khabbab hid quickly in another room. Fatima and her husband stood frozen in fear. "You have left the religion of your fathers?" Umar roared. Said tried to reason with him, but Umar's anger took over. He struck Said to the ground. His sister ran to protect her husband, and Umar, in his rage, pushed her away. She fell, her face bleeding. That moment changed everything. Umar looked down and saw the blood on her face. His sister stared back at him, her eyes full of courage. She said, "Yes, Umar, we have accepted Islam. We believe in Allah and His Messenger. Do what you wish. We will not leave the truth." Those words pierced his heart like an arrow. For the first time, Umar's anger began to fade. He looked at his sister, hurt, yet brave, and something broke inside him. He whispered, "Let me see what you are reading." Fatima hesitated. "You are unclean," she said softly. "Go and wash yourself first." Umar stepped outside, washed himself, and came back in. His hands trembled slightly as he took the pages of the Quran. On them were the verses of Surah Taha. He began to read slowly. Taha, we have not sent down the Quran to you to cause you distress, but only as a reminder for those who fear Allah. The words flowed into his heart like a river of light. Each verse struck him with awe. His lips moved quietly as he read more about Allah, about His greatness, about the purpose of life. The same man who once worshipped idols now stood trembling before the words of the true God. Tears filled his eyes. The man who had never bowed to anyone now felt his knees grow weak. He had fought many battles, faced many enemies, but never before had he felt so defeated not by a sword, but by truth. The Quran had broken his pride and awakened his heart. He looked at his sister, his eyes full of emotion. These words, they are not the words of any human. Take me to Muhammad. Kabab, who had been hiding, came out with tears of joy. He said, "O Umar, glad tidings. The Prophet, peace be upon him, has prayed that Allah may strengthen Islam with either you or Abu Jahl. It seems his prayer has been answered with you." Umar wiped his tears, picked up his sword, and walked toward Dar al-Arqam, the house where the Prophet, PBUH, and his companions gathered in secret. Every step he took now was different not of anger, but of purpose. When he reached the door, the companions inside became frightened. They had heard stories of Umar's anger. Hamza, R.A., stood up and said, "If he has come for good, we welcome him. If not, we will stop him." Umar entered. The Prophet, PBUH, looked at him calmly. Umar's heart was racing. He approached the Prophet, PBUH, and with trembling hands he said, "O Messenger of Allah, I have come to believe in Allah and His Messenger." The Prophet's face lit up with joy. "Allahu Akbar," he said. The room filled with voices shouting, "Allahu Akbar," so loudly that the sound echoed through Makkah. The Muslims, who had once prayed in fear, now stood tall. Umar's acceptance of Islam gave them strength and courage. That day was one of the greatest turning points in Islamic history. The man who once walked the streets with pride and anger now walked them with faith and peace. The Muslims who had been hiding began to pray openly at the Kaaba for the first time. Umar, R.A., stood beside them, fearless. The people of Quraysh could not believe it. The strongest man in Makkah had joined the faith they wanted to destroy, but that was Allah's plan. Through Umar, R.A., Islam found a new voice, a voice of justice, strength, and truth. From that day forward, nothing was the same. The light of Islam grew brighter, the hearts of believers grew stronger, and the message of Allah spread wider. The same sword that was once raised to kill the Prophet, PBUH, would now protect him. Islam stood taller that day because one man's heart had changed. Umar ibn al-Khattab, R.A., had found his truth, and the world would never forget it. Chapter 3: The Strength of Islam, Umar's Courage. After accepting Islam, the news spread like wildfire through the streets of Makkah. Umar ibn al-Khattab had accepted Islam. The same Umar, who once swore to destroy the Prophet, peace be upon him, was now standing beside him. The Quraysh could not believe it. Some were shocked, others were furious. To them, Umar was a symbol of power and pride. How could such a man bow his head to the message of Muhammad, PBUH? But Umar, R.A., was not afraid of what people thought. The truth had entered his heart, and once Umar believed, nothing in this world could make him turn back. The very next morning, Umar made a decision that would change everything. He stood up in front of his tribe and announced loudly, "I have accepted Islam." The people stared in silence. Some gasped, some shouted, and others cursed. But Umar didn't move. His eyes were calm, his heart steady. He looked at the crowd and said, "Whoever has the courage to stop me, let him try." No one stepped forward. Even those who hated Islam knew that Umar was not a man to fear anyone but Allah. Still, he wasn't satisfied. He wanted the whole city to know. So he went to the gathering place of Quraysh, where the chiefs met to discuss their affairs. There, in front of all of them, Umar declared again, "I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger." The crowd grew angry. They shouted at him, cursed him, and soon a fight broke out. Umar fought them all alone. He was hit, he was surrounded, but he kept fighting until he could no longer stand. Then one of the elders stopped the crowd, saying, "Leave him. If Umar has accepted this religion, no one will change his mind." That day, Umar R.A. walked away bruised, but his heart was full of peace. He had done what few dared to do. He had stood openly for his faith. And from that moment, the Muslims began to feel a new kind of strength. Before, they used to pray in secret, afraid of what the Quraysh would do. But after Umar and Hamza, R.A., embraced Islam, the believers no longer hid. Together, they marched to the Kaaba to pray publicly for the first time. Imagine that scene: two lines of Muslims walking boldly through the streets of Makkah. At the front of one line was Hamza, the Lion of Allah, and at the front of the other was Umar, the man whose courage made even the enemies of Islam tremble. They reached the Kaaba, raised their hands, and prayed openly under the burning Sunday. People watched in silence. No one dared to stop them. That was the day Islam stood tall for the first time in public. From that moment on, Umar's faith became his armor. He was not just brave, he was wise. He listened carefully to the Prophet, PBUH, and thought deeply about every verse of the Quran. His heart, once full of pride, was now filled with humility. Yet his strength remained now guided by truth and justice. He was the same warrior, but with a new purpose: to protect what was right and to stand against what was wrong. Umar began showing his leadership qualities even before he became caliph. He would sit with the Prophet, PBUH, ask questions, give suggestions, and think about how to make the Muslim community stronger. He was disciplined, organized, and always honest. If he saw something wrong, he would speak up, even if it was difficult. The Prophet, PBUH, once said, "If there were to be a prophet after me, it would be Umar." That was the level of his wisdom and faith. But Umar, R.A., was not just a man of power, he had a soft heart. He cared deeply for the weak, the poor, and the helpless. Once, he saw a small slave girl being beaten by her master. Umar's heart burned with anger. He rushed forward, stopped the beating, and shouted, "How can you harm a soul created by Allah?" Later, when he became caliph, he often said, "When did you enslave people, while their mothers gave birth to them free?" These were not just words, they came from a man who understood pain, justice, and mercy. His respect for truth was so deep that he never cared about status or wealth. Whether a poor man or a rich one stood before him, Umar treated them the same. Even in small matters, he sought fairness. Once, during a trade dispute, he ruled against his own relative, proving that justice was more important than family ties. When the time came for the Prophet, PBUH, to migrate to Medina, most Muslims left quietly and secretly, fearing attacks from Quraysh. But Umar R.A. was different. He took his sword, walked to the Kaaba, and shouted to the Quraysh, "I am leaving for Medina. Whoever wants his mother to lose her son or his wife to become a widow, let him follow me." No one dared to stop him. That was the courage of Umar, the courage that made even the strongest enemies hesitate. In Medina, Umar continued to stand beside the Prophet, PBUH, with loyalty and love. He was always the first to volunteer, the first to speak the truth, and the first to protect Islam. During battles, his bravery was unmatched. In Badr, Uhud, and Khandak, he fought fiercely, not for fame, but for faith. When others doubted, he stood firm. When others feared, he trusted Allah. There were moments in battle when the Prophet, PBUH, would look at Umar and find strength in his presence. His heart was steady, his sword was swift, and his intention was pure. Umar's courage gave confidence to those around him because they knew, as long as Umar was there, no enemy could easily break their line. Through his strength, wisdom, and deep faith, Umar, R.A., became one of the pillars of Islam. His open declaration had given Muslims courage. His leadership gave them direction, and his compassion gave them hope. By the time the Muslims settled in Medina, the man who once carried a sword against Islam was now carrying the banner of truth beside the Prophet. PBUH. His life had already become an example, a lesson that faith can turn even the fiercest enemy into the strongest protector. And this was only the beginning. Greater tests, greater victories, and greater responsibilities were waiting for him. Umar ibn al-Khattab, R.A., had become not just a believer, but a symbol of courage and justice. And wherever the Prophet, PBUH, went, Umar was never far behind, standing tall, protecting the truth, ready to sacrifice everything for the sake of Allah. Chapter 4. The Caliphate begins. Umar becomes the second caliph. When Abu Bakr, RAA, the first caliph of Islam, became ill, he knew the Ummah, the Muslim community, needed a strong, wise, and God-fearing leader to guide them. After deep thought and prayers, he chose Umar ibn al-Khattab, R.A. When Umar heard this, his heart trembled. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. Instead, his eyes filled with tears. He said, "How can I bear a responsibility that even Abu Bakr feared?" He was not hungry for power. He was afraid of the weight of justice, the burden of leading millions of souls, and the fear of standing before Allah one day to answer for every decision he made. When Abu Bakr, R.A., passed away, the people of Medina gathered in the mosque. Umar stood before them with humility. His voice was calm, yet firm. He said, "O people, I have been chosen as your leader, but I am not the best among you. If I do right, help me. If I do wrong, correct me." A man stood and said, "By Allah, if we see you wrong, we will straighten you with our swords." Umar smiled and said, "Alhamdulillah, there is no good in a nation where the people do not advise their leader, and there is no good in a leader who does not listen to his people." That was the beginning of his caliphate, a rule based on truth, justice, and accountability. Umar, R.A., was different from all other rulers of history. He didn't live in a palace. He didn't wear fancy clothes. He slept on a mat made of palm leaves. His food was simple sometimes, just bread and oil. He didn't see himself as a king. He saw himself as a servant of Allah and a shepherd for his people. He once said, "If a dog goes hungry on the banks of the river Euphrates, Umar will be answerable before Allah." Imagine that a leader of one of the world's strongest empires, yet he worried about a hungry dog far away. That was his fear of Allah. Under his leadership, the Islamic Empire grew in strength and justice. But Umar didn't just expand land, he built systems. He established the first organized government in Islamic history. He created the Bayt al-Mal, the public treasury, to take care of orphans, widows, and the poor. He introduced a police system to maintain order, and a justice system to ensure fairness for all Muslim or non-Muslim. He started welfare programs where old people and children received regular support from the state. But what made him truly great was not just his intelligence, it was his heart. At night, when the city slept, Umar would walk the streets of Medina alone. He didn't want guards or attention. He wanted to see the truth with his own eyes. One night, he heard a child crying inside a small house. He knocked on the door and saw a mother trying to calm her baby. Umar asked, "Why is your child crying?" She said, "He's hungry, but I have no food. I'm boiling water to make him think I'm cooking." Umar's eyes filled with tears. Without a word, he ran to the treasury, filled a sack with flour, oil, and dates, and carried it on his own back. His servant offered to help, but Umar said, "Will you carry my sins on the day of judgment? Let me carry this." He cooked the food himself, fed the child, and smiled when the baby finally stopped crying. That night, the Caliph of the Muslims was just a humble servant feeding a hungry child. His leadership changed the world. People in Persia, Egypt, and Syria began to embrace Islam not because of force, but because they saw justice they had never known before. Non-Muslims lived in peace under Umar's rule. They called him the just ruler al-Faruq, the one who separates truth from falsehood. He organized the Hijri calendar, which Muslims still use today. He built new cities like Kufa and Basra. He sent governors to lead lands but always reminded them, "Remember, you are not kings. You are servants of the people." Once, he saw a governor wearing luxurious clothes and asked, "Is this how you dress while people around you are hungry?" He removed him from the post that very day. Umar's rule was not about showing power, it was about showing mercy and fairness. There was discipline, but also compassion. He cried easily when he heard Quran. He prayed long in the night, asking Allah to forgive him. He said, "I wish I were a blade of grass that is eaten by a goat, not a man who has to answer to Allah." That was Umar's greatness, his fear of the hereafter even at the height of worldly success. Under his rule, Islam became a global power. The empires of Persia and Byzantium fell, but Umar never took credit. He said, "We were the most humiliated people on earth. Allah honored us with Islam. If we seek honor in anything else, Allah will humiliate us again." By the end of his rule, the Islamic Empire stretched across thousands of miles. But Umar, R.A., remained the same humble man, simple clothes, pure heart, and unwavering justice. His leadership became a golden example for all generations to come. And this was just the beginning. Because in the next chapter, something remarkable would happen. The world would see not only Umar's justice, but also his unshakable faith and his tragic, yet noble end. The man who ruled hearts and lands would soon face his greatest test. Stay with me, because Chapter 5 will reveal one of the most emotional moments in Islamic history, the final days of Umar ibn al-Khattab. R.A. Chapter 5. The Expansion of Islam. Umar's Leadership and Victories. Under the leadership of Hazrat Umar ibn al-Khattab, Ra, the Islamic world witnessed something no one had imagined before. Lands that were once ruled by powerful empires, Persia, Egypt, and Syria, came under the flag of Islam. But this expansion wasn't built on greed or ambition. It was built on justice, faith, and humility. Umar didn't seek glory. He sought only the pleasure of Allah. While the world saw him as a mighty ruler, he still saw himself as a servant of the people and a servant of his Lord. When Umar, R.A., became caliph, The Muslim nation was small compared to the mighty powers of Persia and Byzantium. These empires were rich, powerful, and feared across the world. But they were also corrupt and unjust. Under Umar's leadership, the Muslims fought not for wealth, but to bring justice and peace to the lands. His generals, like Khalid ibn al-Walid, R.A., Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, R.A., and Amr ibn al-As, R.A., led the armies with discipline and faith. Battle after battle, victory after victory, Islam began to spread from the deserts of Arabia to the rivers of Iraq, the fields of Egypt, and the valleys of Syria. The Persian Empire, which had ruled for centuries, finally fell after the Battle of Qadisiyah. It was one of the greatest military victories in history, but Umar did not celebrate. When news of victory reached him, he didn't throw a feast or wear royal clothes. He fell into sajda prostration, thanking Allah for his help. He cried and said, "O Allah, do not let me become proud. You are the one who gives victory, not us." That was Umar, a man who saw success, but his heart remained bowed before Allah. When Egypt was conquered under Amr ibn al-As, R.A., Umar again gave clear instructions. Do not destroy churches, do not harm priests, protect the weak, and honor your word. These were not the words of a conqueror. These were the words of a man of faith. And because of this justice, people began to embrace Islam with love, not fear. They saw that Muslims were not invaders, they were liberators. One of the most beautiful moments of his caliphate came when Jerusalem was open to Islam. The Christian patriarch of the city said he would only hand over the keys to the city to the Muslim leader himself. So Umar, R.A., traveled from Medina to Jerusalem. But how did he travel? Not with an army or golden chariot. He rode a camel, and his servant took turns riding with him. When they reached the city, it was the servant's turn to ride. So Umar walked beside the camel, pulling it with his hands through the dusty roads. His clothes were patched. His feet were covered in dust. People couldn't believe that this simple man was the ruler of such a vast empire. The Christian patriarch was amazed. He said, "This is the justice and humility we were told about." When Umar entered the city, he didn't raise a sword. He raised his hands in prayer. He made peace with the Christians of Jerusalem, promising them safety, respect, and freedom of worship. This agreement became known as the Covenant of Umar, one of the most peaceful and just treaties in history. Non-Muslims respected him so deeply that many of them would later say, "We never saw a ruler like Umar. He was fair to all." His fairness was legendary. One day, a poor Christian man came to complain. He said the son of a governor had hit him. Umar immediately called the governor and his son. He gave the poor man a whip and said, "Strike the son as he struck you." The man did so, and Umar said to the governor, "Since when did you make people slaves? When their mothers gave birth to them free?" The governor lowered his head in shame. That was Umar's justice. No one was above the law. Even as the Islamic Empire grew to thousands of miles, Umar, R.A., remained simple. His clothes were rough. His meals were plain, sometimes just bread and salt. He once said, "If I eat meat every day, I fear I will forget the poor." He refused to accept gifts, and he never took a salary higher than what he needed to survive. When foreign delegations came to meet him, they were often shocked to find the great caliph lying on the floor of the mosque, sleeping on the sand with a stone under his head. Someone once said to him, "O leader of the believers, you rule half the world, yet you sleep on the ground?" Umar smiled and said, "I found peace here, not in palaces." His leadership brought both strength and softness to Islam. The army grew strong, but the hearts of believers stayed humble. The economy improved, trade flourished, and knowledge spread. But Umar never let victory change him. He reminded his people, "We are a nation whom Allah has honored with Islam. If we seek honor in anything else, He will humiliate us." These words became a guiding light for generations. Every time a new victory was reported, Umar didn't celebrate with pride, he prayed with tears. He would say, "O Allah, do not make me proud of what you have given. Keep me small before you." He feared that success could lead to arrogance, and arrogance could destroy faith. That was the secret of his greatness. Power never touched his heart. As years passed, the name of Umar ibn al-Khattab, R.A., became known across continents. Kings respected him, enemies feared him, but the poor, loved him because they knew he cared for them more than anyone else. And yet, even as the world praised him, Umar never stopped preparing for the day he would meet his Lord. He often said, "If I can pass through this life with my deeds equal neither punished nor rewarded, I will be saved." That humility made him one of the greatest men who ever lived. But soon, his journey was about to reach its final chapter, one that would shake the hearts of believers. In the next part, we'll witness the final days of Umar ibn al-Khattab, R.A., his martyrdom, his final words, and the legacy he left behind that continues to inspire the world today. Stay with me till the end because his ending was as powerful as his life. Chapter 6: The Final Days. The Legacy of Umar, R.A. It was early morning in Medina. The mosque was filled with peace. The believers stood in straight rows for Fajr prayer. The voice of the muezzin had just echoed through the city, "Come to prayer, come to success." As the Caliph of the Muslims, Umar ibn al-Khattab, R.A., stepped forward to lead. The sun had not yet risen, and the air was calm. He raised his hands and said, "Allahu Akbar." The congregation followed. But in that moment of silence and devotion, a shadow moved through the rows. A man from among the prisoners of Persia, named Abu Lulu, carried a double-edged dagger hidden under his cloak. Suddenly, he rushed forward and stabbed Umar, R.A., multiple times in the stomach. The people were in shock. Chaos broke out in the mosque. Umar fell to the ground, his face pale, his body weak, his lips whispering the name of Allah. Even in that pain, he thought not of revenge, but of the people. He pulled Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, R.A., close and said, "Continue the prayer for the people." Then he was carried home, bleeding, his face calm, but his body trembling. When he opened his eyes again, he asked the first question that showed what kind of man he was. "Has the prayer been completed?" When they said yes, he smiled weakly and said, "There is no part in Islam for one who abandons prayer." Doctors tried to save him, but his wounds were deep. He asked who his attacker was, and when they told him it was a Persian slave, he said, "Alhamdulillah that the man who killed me was not a Muslim." He didn't curse his killer. He didn't order punishment. He forgave. In those final hours, the man who once made kings tremble showed his greatest strength mercy. When his time grew near, Umar, R.A., called his son, Abdullah ibn Umar. His voice was weak, but his heart was strong. He said, "My son, go to Aisha, R.A., the mother of the believers. Ask her permission for me to be buried beside my two companions, the Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, and Abu Bakr, R.A." Abdullah went, and Aisha, R.A., wept when she heard his request. She said, I had reserved that spot for myself, but today I give it to Umar. When Abdullah returned and told him, Umar's eyes filled with tears. He said, "There is nothing more precious to me than to rest beside my prophet and my friend." As his breaths became heavier, Umar, Ra, began to speak his final words. He looked around and said, "If I die, bury me beside my two companions. And when you carry me, do not rush. Be gentle." Then he turned his eyes to the sky and whispered, "O Allah, you have honored me with Islam, guided me through the Prophet, and made me a ruler over the believers. Now, forgive me. I have not done enough." Those around him cried. They remembered his justice, his strength, and his humility. This was the man who had changed the world, yet, in his last moment, he felt small before Allah. He was not afraid of death. He was afraid of standing before his Lord unworthy. Then his lips moved one last time. His soul returned to the one who created him. The great Umar ibn al-Khattab, R.A., had left this world. When the news spread through Medina, silence fell. It felt as if the sun itself had dimmed. Men and women cried openly in the streets. Even his enemies lowered their heads in respect. Non-Muslims who lived under his rule wept, saying, "The world has lost a just man." Umar, R.A., was buried next to the Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, and Abu Bakr, R.A., just as he wished, side by side with the two men he loved most. And thus ended the life of a man who began as a fierce warrior, became a humble believer, and left as a symbol of justice. His rule lasted 10 years, but his influence still lives after more than 1,000. Under his leadership, the deserts that once bowed to idols now bowed only to Allah. The weak were protected, the hungry were fed, and truth was stronger than power. His name, Umar al-Faruq, still echoes in history as the man who separated right from wrong, darkness from light. Generations later, scholars, rulers, and reformers would say, if you want to see what true leadership looks like, look at Umar ibn al-Khattab. His justice became a model for the world. His humility became a lesson for kings. His faith became a light for all who lead. Umar, R.A., proved something eternal, that true power doesn't come from wealth, armies, or thrones. It comes from fear of Allah and love of truth. He once said, "Power doesn't change a man, faith does." And his entire life was proof of that. He rose from the sands of Makkah, strong, proud, and stubborn, and he left the world as a man of mercy, wisdom, and devotion. He changed not only history, but hearts. And as we remember him today, we must also remember his message that justice, humility, and faith are what truly build nations. The legacy of Umar ibn al-Khattab, R.A., reminds us that greatness is not in ruling others, but in ruling oneself with faith and sincerity. So, my dear viewers, if you felt inspired by the story of this remarkable man, don't let it end here. Let his life guide you. Let his strength motivate you. Let his faith awaken something within you. If you learned something new today, make sure to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories from Islamic history. Your one click helps spread knowledge and keeps these beautiful lessons alive. Until next time, stay strong in faith, stay humble in heart, and remember, true greatness begins with sincerity before Allah. If this story touched your heart or opened your mind, don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends, family, or anyone who loves learning about great personalities and true faith. Every share helps spread the light of knowledge and keeps these powerful lessons alive. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you want more inspiring stories like this. Stories that not only teach you English in a simple way, but also teach you life lessons filled with wisdom, faith, and purpose. And I'd love to hear from you. What lesson did you learn from the life of Hazrat Umar? Was it his justice, his humility, or his fearless faith in Allah? Write your thoughts in the comments below. Your words might inspire someone else today. Stay connected, stay motivated, and remember every story brings us closer to understanding who we are and what we can become when faith leads the way.